Hey guys! Part 7 of What If Naruto Awakens Sage Mode at a Young Age. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start. Chapter 15, Uchiha or Monster. He's going to have to decide now. It's completely up to him from this point forward. I can give him the power, the strength to become a monster. I can train him for years and years, but there is one thing that still stands in his way. His Uchiha pride. It is time for him to choose. Uchiha or monster? Training Ground 44, Enko began with a sadistic smirk, is more commonly referred to as the Forest of Death. Naruto really wanted to smirk at her words. She really wanted to scare the genin the best she could. He was, however, preoccupied at the moment. He didn't know if the Hibi was arrogant or naive, because Naruto was able to feel him the moment he entered the village. He also knew that he wasn't the real Hibi, but that didn't make the Kamikage any less furious. Did he really think he could fool him with that disguise? Did he really think he could get to his student without going through him? Did he think he was that adept in stealth that he could slip past the greatest censor ever born? Yes, Orochimaru was a fool, because there was nothing the blonde couldn't see. The fact that the skin he was using was constantly looking at Enko really pissed him off. If he wasn't under orders from the Hokage to act like he knew nothing, he would have killed him, even if he wasn't the real one. Naruto actually had to clench his fist so hard that he broke skin to keep himself from ripping the intruder to pieces. The Uzumaki knew exactly what he was here for. He may have been staring at Enko, but he was thinking about nothing but Sasuke, or more specifically, Sasuke's eyes. Naruto would have fun taking the traitor's life. Here, Naruto began, each team will receive a scroll. To complete this exam, you'll need both a heaven and an earth scroll. You have 5 days to complete this task, so don't rush. He finished. Enko smirked. Now, we need you all to sign these release forms. You know, just in case you lose your lives. We can't have Konoha responsible for your incompetence, now can we? With that said, most of the genin looked pale, sickly so. Sasuke, on the other hand, had the look Naruto knew very well. He was eager to wake up. Good. He will need it when Orochimaru approaches him. He couldn't wait to see what happens. He couldn't wait to see how Sasuke dealt with an opponent he could not defeat. This would be the final test he needed to go through, and depending on the outcome, Sasuke would either be a lot stronger because of it, or Naruto was wrong about the Uchiha, and he would stop training him immediately. One could not teach one to see if they insisted on staying blind. Hopefully, Naruto was right, and Sasuke was ready to open his eyes and see. Alright, line up at your designated gates and be ready for the starting whistle, Enko announced after collecting all of the signed forms. Oh, and one last little piece of advice. Her smirk made Naruto proud. Don't fuck with the inhabitants of the forest. They like fresh meat. As she walked towards Naruto, he couldn't help but shake his head and smirk. Even with Orochimaru on his mind, Enko was able to make him smile. That was one of the reasons he loved her. The starting whistle blew, and the genin rushed into the Forest of Death. The second exam had begun. Nice speech, Enko. You really know how to scare genin. Enko gave him one of her giant smiles that she gave when she was proud about something. Yeah, you know, you either have the gift or you don't. She stuck her nose up in mock superiority. It's an art form, really. She chuckled at her own joke. Before Naruto could reply, Nico's sunshine body flickered into the entrance of Training Ground 44, right behind him with the rest of Team Ro. The entire team was in the usual A and BU salute. We've searched the place you mentioned. Nico started. You were right, a female Kusa Kunoichi was murdered. Naruto sighed. Your orders? She asked. Clean it up and report to the Hokage. I'll take it from here. Thank you, Nico, he nodded towards the rest of Rohan, all of you. And then he was gone, like he wasn't even there to begin with. Enko's eyes widened. All she did was blink and then, nothing. Naruto was gone. Team Ro, besides Nico, sunshine body flickered away, ready to complete the task they were ordered to do. Nico noticed the snake user's confusion and decided to elaborate. Taicho is extremely advanced in the Shunshin body flicker. With that said, Nico took her leave, catching up with her cell. Anko didn't know what was going on, but she guessed it was important if Naruto was involved. She thought she would be able to spend the day with him, but it looked like that wasn't going to happen anymore. She sighed and accepted what her day was going to be like. Sake and Dango it was then. Sasuke couldn't stop thinking about it as he and Team 7 roamed the forest of death. He knew he should be paying attention for enemy Nin, but he just couldn't get it off his mind. It was a simple question. Well, simple in the way it was worded. There were only 6 words in the question, and they weren't even all that complex. The question in nature, though, that's when it got complicated. The meaning behind the words had him internally struggling. How could he choose between the two? He was born as one of them. It was who he was. He had taken pride in it ever since he was able to properly understand who and what he was. He wanted to become the other. It was what he saw himself as. When he properly understood what it was, he knew what he wanted, like the entire world became clear. It confused him because he didn't know why he couldn't be both. Even if he chose one, how could he not be the other? He knew there was a meaning behind Naruto's words, he just couldn't find it. Everything Naruto said had a hidden meaning behind it. Did it mean he wouldn't be taught if he chose wrong? He could lie. No. He couldn't lie to Naruto, even if he wanted. There wasn't a person dead or alive that could lie to that guy. So what was it? What would he choose? Would he keep his pride and arrogance and stay an Uchiha? Or would he let himself be reborn as a monster? Could he let his clan name go? Could he look past his family and be the shinobi he wanted to be? Did he even really want to be a monster? When that question came to his mind, he somehow knew his answer. Would he give his precious eyes to protect what Itachi loved? Yes. Would he give his life for heaven? Yes. Would he let his prideful family name go? Yes. He was going to be a monster, no matter what the cost. Fear. All she could feel was fear. The woman was just looking at them, but that, apparently, was enough. Images of her and her team dying were the only thing on her mind. It was like they were already dead. Her skin was just as cold as her sweat. Her heartbeat was extremely fast, and so very loud. It was like the entire world could hear it. She couldn't tell if she was breathing hard or soft. This was it. They were all going to die. The woman's vicious, creepy smile was etched into her mind. Don't you see, Sasuke-kun? I can give you this power. I can give you what you want. The woman began to approach them. We are a lot alike, you and I. Leave Konoha, and I can make you strong enough to have your precious revenge. Sasuke was just staring at the ground, like he was just as terrified as Sakura. His body was shaking and he didn't say a word. Join me, Sasuke-kun, she said again. Or join your fellow Konoha shinobi in death. She smirked. She was looking at Sakura while she said this. Sakura managed to whimper the closer she got to them. Just before she could reach them, Sasuke raised his head, looking her straight in the eyes. He even managed to stop her in mid-step. Why was the boy smiling? Thank you, Orochimaru, said Hibi, narrowed his eyes. How did the Uchiha know who he was? I never really understood what he meant by being awake. Sasuke took in a deep breath. You have shown me what it truly means. His onyx eyes morphed to a blood-red crimson, 3 tomo in one eye, 2 in the other, greeted the world. You think I would abandon Konoha to gain the power you promise? The genin actually laughed. I've been promised true strength, true power from a god. Sasuke knew he stood no chance against an opponent like the Snake Team, but that meant little to him. Why do you look so surprised? Did you truly believe you could escape my master? Did you think he wouldn't warn me about you? He took out a kunai. You're an arrogant fool, Orochimaru. This was it. He was awake. His eyes were finally open. His soul was finally free. My master's eyes can see everything. It's too late, he can already see you. He was finally a monster. The Hibi Sannin started to chuckle. You stand against me with a confident smirk on your face, and you call me the arrogant fool? The pale man's tongue slithered out of his mouth, licking the air creepily. Let's see just how much you value your village. Before he even finished his sentence, the Sannin took off. Even with his Sharingan, Sasuke wasn't fast enough to react to Orochimaru's speed. Sakura was being held by the snake Sannin, and a kunai was placed at her throat. Sasuke gripped his kunai and snarled. Let her go. The snake chuckled. Now why would I do that? He put pressure on Sakura's throat with his blade, a thin line of blood following the threatening action. What will you do, Sasuke-kun? He asked with creepy joy. What would someone like you want with me? Sasuke began to think out loud. Why me specifically? His eyes met the Sannin's. It's the Sharingan, isn't it? He asked. You want the power of the Uchiha, and I'm the only one who you could take it from. He smirked. You're a bit late, Orochimaru, the Uchiha began in a serious voice. My eyes already belong to heaven. He took his kunai and placed it in front of his left eye. And I know for a fact that my master would rather have me carve these eyes of mine out before they were tainted by you. Sasuke's voice snapped Sakura out of her terrified stupor. As Sasuke-kun, she whispered. You wouldn't, Orochimaru started, you'd never sacrifice your revenge for a worthless kunoichi genin. He tried not to show it, but Sasuke had him a little worried. Kabuto had told him that the boy was a selfish, stuck-up, revenge-crazed typical Uchiha. This, however, was very different from the genin he saw in front of him. You don't know a damn thing about me, Sasuke said softly. Or my brother. Orochimaru raised an eyebrow. We protect Konoha, and all of her citizens. He raised the kunai to better thrust, ready to serve his master in the only way he knew he could. That's when he felt it. It was like a hand was holding his back, stopping him. It was a strange feeling, and he couldn't really explain it, but it was there. He had felt this before. He knew exactly what this was, who this was. It was hope incarnate. It was a god among men. It was an angel of heaven. It was a monster. It was his master. It was Naruto. The forest surrounding them was alit in a golden light. Even with his Sharingan, Sasuke had to shield his eyes from the majestic shine. It was like the sun, extremely bright and warm. It washed over all of them, and just as fast as it came, it left. When Sasuke slowly blinked his eyes open, he couldn't stop the smirk that crept onto his face. Orochimaru was gone, from above Sakura's head. What was left of the snake Sannin's body fell to its knees, releasing the cherry blossom. When it hit the ground, it crumbled away like dust. Tears ran down Sakura's cheeks, and she did the only thing she could, and Sasuke let her. When Sai finally met up with the rest of his team after he was separated from them, he was met with Sakura weeping within Sasuke's embrace. Sasuke's Sharingan was still active, so he was able to see how fake their last teammate's smile was. Naruto was right. They needed to have a talk with Sai. Naruto had been watching Team 7 for a little while when the traitorous snake showed its ugly face. He had watched with curiosity. What would Sasuke do in the presence of someone who could easily kill him if he wanted? He was furious when Orochimaru just looked at Sai and the boy took off, leaving his comrades behind. That was the worst thing he could have done. Naruto had been trained since he was 3 to value his subordinates above even the mission. Sai was now worse than trash, and Naruto needed to let the boy know of his place. That's when the sinister, disgusting killing intent leaked from the enemy of heaven. He could feel how scared Sakura was. The girl had been training every day as hard as she possibly could, but there was nothing she could do to ready herself for something like this at her current level. It wasn't her fault, and Naruto was pissed that she had to go through it. This wasn't her fight. This wasn't her problem. Orochimaru should have been killed a long time ago. Sasuke, however, reassured Naruto that he had made the right choice in apprentice. To actually wake in the face of someone like the snake Sannin, it was priceless. He actually smirked at him. It was perfect. When he felt the Uchiha's resolve, he even smiled. He was ready to rid himself of his eyes for Sakura, for Konoha. If that wasn't the actions of an angel of heaven, then Naruto didn't know what was. Before he could actually carve his eyes out, Naruto decided it was time to end this. He reached out to Sasuke with his chakra, his will. The young Uchiha would need those eyes if he wanted to complete his goal. He then promptly rid the forest of death of Orochimaru. After his presence lifted from the forest, Sasuke even managed to surprise the bringer of hope. He did not expect the Uchiha to allow the much-needed embrace for Sakura. He could feel his heart, his mind, his soul. Sasuke was different, better. He no longer saw Sakura or any other shinobi as hindrances, but as important allies. As family. Sasuke had passed his last test. He was now seen as a monster in the eyes of a monster. Naruto's eyes narrowed when Sai finally decided to grace his team with his presence. He could tell that Sasuke had also seen his fake smile. He was right. They needed to have a talk with Sai. Sakura couldn't stop thinking about it. Team 7 had found a huge tree with a hollowed-out trunk and decided to make camp for the night. While she was trying to sleep, and then after she woke, all she could think about was Sasuke's actions. The Uchiha had been her crush since she was a little girl in the academy, and he never had a nice thing to say about her the entire time. They never spoke as friends, or even comrades. They never really spoke unless they absolutely had to, or when she would get shot down when she asked him for dates. He never looked at her the way she wanted no matter how hard she tried. So that's why, when he was willing to carve his own eyes out for her, she just couldn't believe it. He had been speaking to the man-lady, but he had looked straight at her when he was about to thrust his kunai into his own skull. That one look was the reason for her restlessness in the matter. Why did he look at her at the last moment? Yes, the fact that he would do that at all was extremely shocking, especially for someone like him, but that wasn't what bothered her the most. It was his look. He had looked at her the way she had craved for her entire life. It was only for a split second, but it had happened. She hadn't seen things. She hadn't. She needed to know why. Wait! Sasuke whispered suddenly. Someone's coming. He brought a kunai out from his weapons pouch. It didn't take long before 3 figures appeared. 3 figures Team 7 knew, kind of. We finally found you. An odd-looking boy with spiky black hair and an Oto Hatai yelled. Dosu. Kin. I told you I'd find them. The only other male of the group, an even stranger-looking man wrapped up in bandages, huffed. Sure. It only took you 2 days. Dosa deadpanned. Whatever. Let's just hurry up and kill them. Kin, the only female, groaned in an annoyed tone. She then developed a smirk. Too bad, though. Her eyes went up and down Sasuke. He's such a looker. Sasuke smirked, but it wasn't because he was flattered. He was already able to wake up so soon after the last time. He loved it. He let loose his kunai, but Zaku, the first to speak, used one of his own to block the rather sloppy throw. Damn. This kid sucks. A smirk found its way onto the monster's face as his kunai hit its target. He can't even throw a kunai right at this range. It'll be easy to kill him, then. Leaves that fell from the trees his kunai hit above the sound genin came into his vision. And here I thought he'd be fun to play with. Sasuke suddenly went through a series of hand seals, faster than the other genin could react. Naruto was a slave driver, but his methods worked. He was sometimes a hardcore physical training enthusiast. Sasuke had gained muscle in the few hours he was like that. He was then someone who sat him down and worked to his weaknesses. It was like he was giving him more attention than anything else. Sasuke had finally learned the Shunshin body flicker because of that. He drilled nothing but teamwork into his mind for an entire day. He had been told that those who abandon the mission are trash, which was obvious. It was one of the shinobi rules after all. He then continued with, but those who abandon their comrades are worse than trash. Today, Sasuke finally understood what that meant. He would also, on rare occasions, help him like he was still in the academy. At first Sasuke had thought he was mocking him or something, but he quickly learned that it was actually a beneficial method of learning. And that Naruto never mocked him, or anyone. All of that was hammered into every fiber of his being in the time span of a few weeks. Unfortunately for these Oto scum, that was enough. He was the apprentice of the Kamikage. It was time the world understood that. The young Uchiha took in a deep breath, ready to let loose his family's most used jutsu. Sasuke vanished. It wasn't until Zaku's screams echoed in the forest that anyone knew where he had gone. Behind said genin, Sasuke stood, the flames from his katan, Gokaku no Jutsu, fire release, great fireball technique, clinging to the spiky-haired shinobi reflecting in his crimson eyes. There was no crazed, creepy look in those eyes of his. All there were the eyes of a monster. The eyes of someone awake. Kin was the first to react. She dove forward, at the pink-haired female of the team. Before Sakura could counter, or do anything really, Kin was behind her, her pink hair within the Sound Nin's hand. Haruno cried out in pain when the bitch pulled, hard. "Don't move, Uchiha! Or I'll kill her!" she shouted. Before Sasuke could make a move on Dosu, he stopped at the girl's voice. That's when their eyes met again. He looked at her the way she always wanted a second time, and she didn't know why. With tears threatening to fall from her eyes, she withdrew a kunai from her weapon's holster and cut. As Pink fell, her eyes never left the Sharingan ones of her teammate. She would not bring him down anymore. She wouldn't be the weak, helpless person she knew she was anymore. She was a kunoichi of Konoha, damn it! It was time for her to start acting like one. Sasuke smirked at the look in her eyes and nodded. She had his respect. She had his attention. Instead of switching places with the leaves with the Kawarimi no Jutsu, body replacement technique, like he did to get rid of Zaku, he decided to shun Shin, body flicker, to Kin. His foot met her stomach with a sickening thump. She wasn't unconscious, but that had to have hurt her. When he turned to face Dosu, the man was already about to attack. Before he could use the same technique that blew Kabuto away on him, he was hit in the back of the head. When the Otonin's mind cleared, he noticed he hadn't even been aiming at Sasuke, but at his female accomplice. Sasuke once again looked at Sakura. So Kakashi decided to teach her some genjutsu. Yeah, she definitely had his attention now. Sasuke was already on top of him before he could stand, and a kunai was placed firmly at his throat. The two just stared at each other for a moment before Sasuke began. "Give me your scroll of earth." He smirked at the man's confusion. He thought he'd be killed for sure, but that wasn't something Sasuke wanted. Could he take the Sound Shinobi's life? Definitely. But it was the power to decide whether or not the man died that he was looking for. The man's life was for him to choose. And he was not a demon. He was a monster. He was an angel of heaven. It was his way of showing the true strength of Konoha to a newer nation. They had the power to crush anyone they wanted, and chose not to. They wished for nothing but to live in peaceful harmony with the other villages. That was their choice, nothing else. Dosu slowly brought the scroll from his jacket, and handed it to the Uchiha. "You're not going to kill us?" he asked, not understanding the genin's logic. "Why?" Sasuke stood, his eyes meeting the burned form of Zaku. The younger genin was still alive, but his arms were almost useless now. "I'm a Konoha shinobi. We have nothing to prove to people like you." He grabbed the scroll and turned his back. "Take your allies and go. If you survive, I'll see you then." As he was walking back, Kin was on her feet, and snarled as she threw a kunai at the Uchiha that she thought he wouldn't be capable of dodging. That's when he pivoted on his right leg, sticking his left leg into the air. With his Sharingan he could see Team 10 rush out from behind some trees, intent on helping them. Sasuke smirked. They didn't really need it. He used his chakra to attach the kunai to his foot, and shot it back at her with a perfect kick. The kunai only grazed the woman's cheek, but that was what he was aiming for. He meant it when he said they didn't need to die yet. "Wait, Kin!" Dosu shouted. "We're retreating." He stood and shouldered his fallen comrade. "Now," he said sternly when she didn't move. "I can't move," she whispered in panic. She brought her eyes downward and saw that her shadow met that of one of the Konohanins. She was in the same position as he was, and she could tell that he was controlling her. Shikamaru gave Sasuke a glance, one the Uchiha returned with a nod. Shikamaru was never close to Sasuke, or anyone in Team 7 for that matter, but he was one of the few people Naruto talked to about less than public information with. He knew Sasuke was like him now, or becoming like him. He knew the Uchiha was the Kamikichi student, and that told Shikamaru that Sasuke probably knew what he was doing. The Nara returned the nod before letting his Kagemain no Jutsu, shadow imitation technique, go. As soon as Kin had control of her own body again, she leapt back, helping Dosu carry off Saku. Before they left, Dosu spoke. For letting us go, I'll give you some friendly advice. There are some snakes in this forest that we have in our village. With that said, the sound genin took off. Sasuke narrowed his eyes. That was as clear as day. Otogekyo no Sato was associated with Orochimaru somehow. Letting his Sharingan fade away, he turned to Team 10 and Sakura. He almost wanted to laugh. Sai just stood there while they were attacked by enemy shinobi. If Naruto was watching, Sai was going to have a whole lot of trouble on his hands. He shared a brief nod with Shikamaru, a sign of respect and thanks. Naruto had gone over all of the genin in the Chunin exams after he heard the truth. He knew that Nara Shikamaru was smarter than any of them, and that he was almost assured Chunin status if he made it to the finals, which, apparently, was very likely. You guys okay? Choji asked them. Sasuke almost didn't recognize the Akimichi. He was very similar in appearance. His clothes hadn't changed or anything, but his eyes, they were not the same eyes Sasuke was used to. Naruto had told him that he had a talk with the pleasantly plump genin, but this was almost unbelievable. He now had the eyes of a shinobi, yet the gentleness his master spoke of was still present. Naruto was right. Choji was unique. Yeah, we should be fine. Choji almost fell over in shock. Did Uchiha Sasuke actually smile? Thanks for trying to help, though. The raven-haired genin offered his hand to the Akimichi. Everyone present looked at Sasuke strangely. This was not how the Sasuke they all knew since the start of the academy acted. Choji shook out of his shock and took his hand. Yeah, no problem, man. He gave an awkward smile. Ino kind of forced us, but... Sasuke smirked. Well, whatever the case, thanks. He walked up to Sakura and they shared another look. You okay? He asked, not even noticing Ino behind her fixing her hair. Sakura just stared at him for a moment before nodding, which got her scolded by Ino. Yeah, she whispered softly. Sasuke just looked at her for a second before finally nodding and walking away. We've got both scrolls, what about you? He asked Shikamaru. The Nara nodded. Hi. We were headed for the tower when we ran into you. He stretched. You want to team up? It's probably safer to travel together than alone. He acted like it wasn't a big deal, but Shikamaru asked this question for two reasons. The first was to see if Sasuke would accept help. He knew that he was a prideful prick who thought that help was only for the weak. If he accepted, then Naruto was a far better teacher than he said he was, and the Nara had a theory for that too. The last reason was the obvious. Sasuke was obviously stronger than most of the genin in the forest. If they moved together, they'd be much, much safer. Sasuke was silent for a moment before he nodded. All right. You're right, we're safer together. As he said this, Ino was finished with Sakura's hair. Yay! Ino shouted. I want to walk next to Sasuke-kun. Sasuke sighed, but was really impressed with Sakura's reaction, or lack of. She just stood there silent. She didn't care about her and Ino's lame competition to win his affection. Without another word, Team 7 and Team 10 headed for the tower that sat in the middle of Training Ground 44. None of the genin noticed the smirking blonde watching them from the shadows. Naruto stood next to the Hokage on the arena balcony of the tower. To either side of them, Jonin stood, looking over all of the genin that made it through the second test. There were a lot more than anyone thought there'd be. That's why everyone was assembled. They needed to slim the participants down a little. Naruto had a smile on his face the entire time, and it was for more than one reason. The first was the less obvious. Sasuke had made him proud with his actions in the forest. He was right about him. He was different, just like him. The second reason was the obvious. Mitarashi Anko had her arms wrapped around him from the back again. Apparently it was her new favorite spot. Naruto had to agree with her choice. He could feel the jealousy of most of the males in the room. It amused him that his Gigi even felt a little bitter towards him because of his luck. It was the end of the second test, and the Hokage had called everyone together. Naruto could see Team 7, Team 8, Team Guy, and Team 10 in all their glory. It made the Kamikage happy that Konoha had so many teams make it this far. He could also see the Sand siblings he had met a few days ago. Good. Sasuke would need the challenge. He wasn't all that surprised when he saw two teams from Kirigakure. With the friendly treaty between them, Mei had no reason not to send her genin to Konoha. He was looking forward to seeing her again. Did she even care about him still? He wanted to punch himself in the face for thinking about another woman when Anko's warm body was wrapped around him. There was another team from Konoha present, and Naruto wasn't at all happy about it. A team from Otogakure had also made it. Sasuke had warned him of their ties with the Hibi Sannin, but by then he had already known. Naruto had spread his mind throughout all of Konoha the second he felt Orochimaru's presence. Nothing happened in heaven that he didn't know about when he actually tried to feel her. The god of shinobi began. The fact that all of you have made it to this point proves that the next generation will indeed surpass us. Naruto could feel his leader's happiness. It takes more than anything anyone can teach to make it in that forest of ours. He took a moment to look over the young genin assembled before him. The Chunin exams have more than one purpose. It allows your superiors to see your progress with their own eyes, this is true. But the main and most important reason is to showcase the power your nation wields. He took a deep breath. If you are standing in this room, you are a shinobi of an ally nation to Konoha. However, no matter how friendly our nations are, we must, unfortunately, show each other the strength we possess. War is such a fickle thing, and these exams are a solution. He paused for a moment, letting the information sink in. They are a peaceful way of showing each other our military might without dragging our entire countries into the mess. Now enough with my ramblings, Hade coughed, trying his best to politely interrupt the god of heaven. Hokage-sama, may I? He asked. He wanted to explain what was happening since he was proctoring it. Hiruzen nodded, allowing the sickly Tokubetsu Jonin to take the spotlight. Hade coughed again before he started. My name is Gecko Hade, and I will be the proctor for the remaining time. There are far too many prevailing genin, so we have decided to hold preliminaries. He actually smiled. Right now. The genin of the room went up in an uproar. But we just spent 5 days in a place called the Forest of Death. One of the boys from Mizu shouted. Let us have a break, Tenten shouted. Most of the other genin were whispering their dislike for the idea among themselves. This continued for 5 seconds before Naruto cleared his throat. Usually, this wouldn't have made much of an impression in the noisy arena. This, however, was from the bringer of hope, and Naruto never did unimpressive. The chakra he sent to his throat magnified the sound 20 times, making it sound like an angry roar more than a simple cough. The room went silent, and Hade nodded his thanks to his little brother. These preliminaries will be one-on-one matches. The winner is decided when an opponent can no longer continue or forfeits. I also have the ability to end a match at any time. Failure to obey my commands will result in disqualification. Hade pointed to the large screen on the wall that sat in the center of both balconies and coughed. Your names will be randomly selected and shown on that screen. When you see your name, make your way down here and ready yourself to fight on my mark. He paused for a moment. Before we start, is there anyone who wishes to forfeit now? The room was silent for a moment before Yakushi Kabuto raised his hand. Yes. I'd like to forfeit, Proctor. I'm too exhausted. Hade nodded. 2 ANBU appeared at either side of the spy. These ANBU will take you out of the forest. Naruto kept his eyes on the genin below, but he was internally fighting himself. He really wanted to kill Kabuto and be done with it. Anko must have noticed his anger through his tensing body because he felt her deliberately rub her chest against his back. And just like that, Naruto wasn't mad anymore. Anyone else? Hade asked. When no one raised their hand, he continued. All right then. Please make your way to the balcony above, and we'll start the first match of the preliminary exam. As the genin began to file to their designated area, Naruto warned the Sandame in their chakra burst code. Yakushi Kabuto is a spy for Orochimaru. Oh? Otogekure is affiliated with Orochimaru as well. I see. Sunagekure is planning something with them, too. Sounds about right. You don't seem too worried about any of this. That's because I'm not. Why? We have something that they don't. And what's that? Naruto smirked, already feeling his Gigi's amused and totally serious mind. You. Will Temari and Tenten please enter the arena? Hate called out. While Naruto and the Hokage had their secret conversation, the first match had already been decided. Naruto sighed. He knew that Tenen was a skilled kunoichi, but he also knew that Temari was already at Chunin level. He had never seen the battle fan-wielding kunoichi in action before, but he could tell that her wind affinity was strong. He already knew who was going to win this fight before it even began. Like he predicted, Tenten had used her signature techniques off the bat. She only had amateur fuinjutsu, so going up against someone who could already use elemental ninjutsu was not very successful. Anything she threw at the blonde Sunanin was pushed away with a swing of her fan. Tenten had used a technique he had never seen before as well, but even then she wasn't able to match the winds of Temari's fan. The match ended with Temari tossing Tenten around like a ragdoll. Winner, Temari. Hate stated. Medical Nin rushed out and collected the downed kunoichi. She hadn't been injured very badly. A good night's sleep and she would be fine. You know. Hiruzen began while they waited for the next names to be called. I don't see what all the fuss is about you. Naruto smirked. I mean, you're only 12. Naruto wanted burst into laughter. The Hokage, the god of shinobi, was pouting. It's the blonde hair and blue eyes, Gigi. The ladies can't resist it. He listened to Anko's strong heartbeat. That, or there really is such a thing as the Namikaze charm. He chuckled to himself. In my day, there was the Sarutobi charm. It's rare that I get to see the Hokage pout. What would everyone say if they could see the mighty Sarutobi Hiruzen in such a sorry state? The Hokage almost huffed. Before or after I had you assassinate them? Naruto shook his head. He was quiet for a moment before he started again. It's not as glamorous as it seems, you know. Hiruzen raised an eyebrow. And how in Kami's name is it not glamorous? Again Naruto was silent before he replied. When you love two women, it kind of tends to get complicated. This time it was the Sarutobi who was silent before he began. Love? Love. Hiruzen's eyes gazed at Anko for a moment before Naruto nodded. And the other? The Godame Mizukage. Will Haruno Sakura and Yamanaka Ino please enter the arena? Hade called out, interrupting the two most powerful shinobi in Konoha. Naruto gave Sakura and Ino his full attention. He could feel Ino's mind. The girl was still obsessed with winning Sasuke, and saw Sakura as a rival for that affection. She saw this fight as a way to prove herself more worthy for the young Uchiha. Naruto shook his head and sighed. He then felt Sakura. He saw her speaking with Sasuke a moment before her name was called. Whatever Sasuke had said had totally blown the pink-haired girl away. She felt so much more confident. She felt like if she died today, she would be content. What did Sasuke say? Whatever it was, it had changed Sakura remarkably. Naruto really needed to know what was said between the two. His curiosity got the best of him, and before anyone knew it, he was beside the Uchiha, Anko and all. What the Anko muttered. She looked at the back of Naruto's head and back at the spot they were at just before and shrugged. She was kind of getting used to all the weird shit her soldier boy could do. Sasuke nodded to Naruto in respect. Shursho, he greeted. What were you and Sakura discussing? He asked suddenly. He didn't care if he was being blunt. He really wanted to know what was said between the two. Sasuke was silent, somewhat embarrassed with the topic. She wanted to know. He looked to the right. Why, I looked at her right before I was about to cut my eyes out. He finished in a whisper. Anko's eyes widened, but she stayed silent. Naruto smiled, already knowing why he did it. He had felt it when it happened. Still, it was good for him to say it. And what did you tell her? Sasuke sighed. I wanted the last thing I saw to be an angel. Now, Sasuke was by no means a romantic, and he didn't mean it in the way Sakura probably took it, but Naruto had to admit, he was going to use that one. I see. Naruto felt Anko's growing desire to open her mouth. That's all then. He finished before his sunshine body flickered back to the Hokage's side. Anko didn't even react this time. She was more interested in the little genin lovers. Naruto shook his head. They aren't loves, Anko. She didn't react to him, almost reading her mind either. She was used to that. Yet, soldier boy. Yet. The smirk on her face would have scared most people, but it only made Naruto return it with one of his own. He hadn't been paying much attention to the match, so when he heard Hyde's voice, he was a little upset with himself. Since both participants are unable to continue, both are disqualified. Ugh, all these girl fights are boring. Even the girl you fought was weak. Kankuro said loud enough for everyone to hear. These kunoichi are so weak. He muttered with a sigh. When the screen showed the next match-up, Naruto smirked. Will Hyuga Hinata and Kankuro please enter the arena? Hate called out. Hinata narrowed her eyes. The young heiress was not very violent, but even she couldn't stand when someone belittled kunoichi. As Hinata made her way to the stairs that led to the arena floor, she was stopped by Niji. Hinata, he didn't use his usual Hinata-hime. He only ever did that when he was his most serious. This Sunanin claims that our kunoichi are below him. He looked at Kankuro, and then back at Hinata. Show him his folly. Show him why the Hyuga are the greatest clan in Konoha. With that said, Niji moved to the side, letting Hinata pass. The young Hyuga kunoichi nodded. A determined look was in her lavender-white eyes. When the two were next to Hate, they took their stances. Naruto couldn't see anything wrong with her form. He guessed working with a genius like Niji helped her more than Naruto thought it would. She was ready to defend her fellow kunoichi. It was time for everyone to see that kunoichi were ninja too. As soon as Hate signaled for them to begin, Hinata activated her clan's dojutsu. Be a Kugen. Hinata smirked. The clown's tactic wouldn't really work on someone who could see through walls. With excellent maneuvering, Hinata pivoted, sending a single thrust of her open palm juken, gentle fist, strike at whatever was wrapped up in bandages on Kankuro's back. The Hyuga genin kept her face the picture of calm as she turned her back on the sexist Sunanin. As she began to walk towards the stairs, Kankuro fell to his knees. When the Suna Jonin sensei appeared at Kankuro's side and began undoing the bandages on his back, everyone could see what had happened. Apparently, Kankuro was a puppeteer. He had been controlling his puppet from where his puppet should have been. With her dojutsu, Hinata was able to see this immediately, so delivering the single blow to his head was very easy. She had made sure she didn't use enough chakra to kill him, though. At most he would just have the worst headache he would ever have in his life when he woke up. Winner, Hyuga Hinata. Hate announced. All of the kunoichi, even the jonin, smirked. Hinata had just fought a battle for every female ninja alive. Kunoichi were not useless. Naruto noticed Niji's proud smile, even though he tried to hide it. Have you noticed him, too? Hiruzen asked. I've known where he's been since he entered Konoha. Hiruzen smirked. As is expected from you. Hi. Hiruzen frowned at the flesh his former student was wearing. For him to walk among us. I thought he was smarter than this. Naruto was so busy with staring Orochimaru down that he didn't notice his hand rub the outside of Anko's thigh. It was his subconscious mind at work, expressing his protective feelings for the woman he loved. Anko, however, noticed it. She stayed silent though. She very much liked the affectionate touch. It matters not how smart he is. Naruto's eyes met Orochimaru's. He didn't care though. He kept his eyes focused on the traitor. He'll be dead soon. His intelligence means nothing now. Once again, Hate broke their conversation. Will Uchiha Sasuke and Akato Yoroi please enter the arena? Chapter 16 Breath of Life. So much has happened. I'm mentally and physically exhausted. My heart aches, for more than one reason. My tinket's sting and my mind just wants to sleep. Even monsters have a limit, and I've found mine. Everyone was silent. This was the match they all wanted to see. Just how powerful was the last Uchiha? He represented an entire clan, and most of the people going to the finals were going to see him specifically. What they didn't know was he now represented something far greater than his surname. He represented the bringer of hope. He represented Konoha's monsters. They would not be disappointed. Yoroi slowly made his way down to the arena floor, a confident smirk adorning his face. Sasuke's eyes met Naruto's, and for a split second, the entire world was gone. For a split second, the two of them were the only people alive. For a split second, the monsters of heaven understood nothing but each other. It said that two warriors could express their emotions and feelings through combat. That may be true, but Naruto and Sasuke were monsters, and all they needed was to meet each other's gaze. Show them the strength we wield. With pleasure. Sasuke's sunshine body flickered, now standing in front of his opponent. Just what have you been doing with Sasuke-kun? Hiruzen asked. He had noticed the young Uchiha acting much different from the upset, confused little boy he knew. But when he entered the tower, the Sarutobi hadn't noticed him at first glance. The way he held himself, the way he walked, the look in his eye, it was all different better. It was like he was a different person. I showed him the truth. About? The match began. Immediately Yoro's hand was coated in chakra, and the older genin rushed the Uchiha. Sasuke's eyes were on the ground, so when they morphed from black to crimson, Yoroi didn't notice. The moment it looked like Yoroi was going to make contact with Sasuke's abdomen, he smirked. Sasuke went up in a cloud of smoke the second Yoroi's chakra absorption hit him. Everyone present was confused, even the Jonin. No one had seen him make a Kage-Bunshin, shadow clone. Naruto was only able to teach him 3 things since Wave. The first was the Kage-Bunshin, shadow clone. The technique had too many applications for him not to teach him it. The second was the Shunshin, body flicker. Naruto had always seen the technique for what it really was. Shinobi only ever used it for transportation, but he showed him how useful it was in battle. And the third? Kakashi smiled under his face mask when he heard the chirping. He never thought Naruto would teach him that technique so soon. More importantly, he didn't think Naruto had the time to teach that technique to him. He shook his head. Of course Naruto had enough time. He could do anything. He was even better at teaching than he was when he lifted his head to look at the roof, and he saw his own technique within his student's hand. The scarecrow raised his head. Sasuke took off at low Jonin level speeds, the infamous Chidori crackling within his left hand. Hatake looked at his Otuto, who returned his gaze with a smirk. Naruto wanted a monster, so he made one. Yoroi had no time to even begin to react to the blitzing form of his opponent. He was smashed into the wall of the arena, cracking it a little with the force he was hit with. Yoroi's breath violently left his lungs. His throat was within the Uchiha's right hand, his left holding the A-rank technique inches from him. Naruto had told him of where this man's loyalties were. You chose the wrong side, spy. Sasuke whispered into his ear. Yoroi's eyes widened. He opened his mouth. I know, he wouldn't leave this room without being marked by his most powerful technique. Chidori! Sasuke shouted, thrusting Hatake Kakashi's only original jutsu into Yoroi's right shoulder. His body convulsed for a moment before the monster withdrew his bloodied arm, allowing the man's body to slump down the wall, unconscious. The raven-haired genin just looked at the wall for a moment, breathing heavily. He had just done the righteous work of heaven, and he had never felt more awake. He was still, taking a moment to realize just who, and what, he now was. He didn't know why, but he could see everything with greater detail. When Sasuke turned, and his Sharingan eyes met Naruto's, the blonde smirked. The Uchiha now had 3 tomo in each eye, a fully mature Sharingan. Winner, Uchiha Sasuke! Hate exclaimed. Medical Nin immediately took Yoroi to the intensive care rooms. He was severely injured, and the longer they took to start helping him, the more likely he was to die. They were too hopeful, because Akato Yoroi was already gone. The arena was silent, everyone just looking at the Uchiha. The genin had no idea what Sasuke had just done, or why most of the jonin were so in awe. What did Sasuke just do to that guy, sensei? Kiba asked Kurenai. All the genin turned to the genjutsu mistress, waiting for her to explain. She gulped and turned to Kakashi, asking for permission to continue. When he nodded, she began. That was the A-rank technique, Chidori. It was created by one of Konoha's greatest current shinobi. She paused, looking at Kakashi. Hatake Kakashi. The genin looked at Kakashi with wide eyes, finally understanding what their fellow genin had just done. Was Sasuke really that different from them? Isn't that technique a little dangerous to teach a rookie genin, Kakashi? Asuma asked, not understanding why he would allow Sasuke to learn it so fast, if at all. I wasn't the one to teach it to him, Kakashi admitted. I didn't even know he knew it existed until I heard the chirping. So then how did he just probably kill someone with it? Guy asked. This was a very serious matter. Firstly, how did the boy use such an advanced assassination technique without being taught by his sensei? And secondly, how was he even able to use such a technique? Sasuke had just shown everyone how different he was from the other genin. He not only could use jonin-level techniques, but he was willing to use them as well. Kakashi didn't respond, instead looking at the person responsible. His fellow jonin followed his eyes. Naruto taught him that? Kurenai asked. Why? The scarecrow chuckled. Sasuke's Naruto's student now. He looked back at the jonin he was standing beside. Apparently, one monster wasn't enough. With that said, the jonin went silent. Naruto was on a different level than they were. He may technically be a jonin, but he had higher clearance than any of them, even Kakashi. He was the Hokage's shadow, so whatever he did, the Hokage was the only one who could scold him for unsafe decisions like putting an A-ranked assassination technique in the hands of a 12-year-old genin. Hiruzen noticed the fully mature Sharingan, and the look he saw within his shadow's eyes within the Uchihas. That's when Naruto answered. Everything. Naruto wanted to laugh. Not only did Shikamaru win his match, which was something he didn't really want to do, he did so in a way that was so brilliantly simple it hid the fact that it was planned out before his name was called out. Tsuchikin had a big mouth, even after getting her ass handed to her by Sasuke a few days before. She was cocky, incredibly so, and she was the kind of person Shikamaru had no interest in fighting, a woman. He honestly felt like forfeiting before it started, but thought that his mother's nagging would be too troublesome. So when he was finally able to catch the Oto Kunoichi in his shadow once again, he promptly shut her up, which involved her head meeting the arena wall, hard. Both Naruto and Anko found the way he won humorous, for different reasons. Anko just thought the way he made her bend back and hit her head was funny looking. Naruto found the fact that it was simple, yet calculated to be hilarious. He really was the laziest genius he had ever met. Will Gaara and Kazuki please enter the arena? Naruto wanted to watch this fight. Kazuki was one of the genin from Kiri. He had croppy brown hair and tan skin. A small tanto was strapped to his back. He never promised anything, but this boy was one of Mei's shinobi, so he wanted to make sure he stayed safe, and that went for all of the genin from the mist. The red-haired boy disappeared in a sand shunshin body flicker and reappeared next to Hate. When Kazuki finally joined them with a confident smirk, Hate started the fight. Right away, the Kirinin unsheathed his blade and took off after his opponent. Before he could even get close enough to the Suna shinobi, sand came rushing out of the gourd that was strapped to his back, blocking the boy's sword and pushing him back. Kazuki got his balance back and threw a kunai from his weapon's holster at Gaara. Once again, the sand blocked for him. Nice trick, creep. He smirked. But you'll need to do more than just def. Whatever he was going to say was cut off when Gaara's sand slammed into the Kiri genin. When the sand subsided, Kazuki was out cold. Gaara looked at Sasuke and gave him a bloodthirsty grin. Winner Gaara. Hate announced, but the Jinchuriki didn't care. He brought his sands up again, intent on smashing his prey once again. When the sands were just about to slam into the unconscious boy, they were stopped by the Kamikage. All he did was flick his wrist, and the sand was pushed back. The proctor has announced your victory. You will respect him, the blonde stated. He turned and leapt back to his place next to the Hokage. Anko smirked and went back to her cozy spot on his back. Gaara glared at the intruding shinobi before he made his way back to his sibling. Temari sighed in relief. She had thought her younger brother was going to unleash that thing right here and now. There was something about that blonde with the woman wrapped around him that made Gaara listen to orders. She didn't know what it was, but even she could feel it. He just radiated with raw power. Temari blushed at the perverted thought that invaded her innocent enough mind. Damn cute blonde boys with blue eyes. The next two fights were less than exciting. The first had Aburame Shino versus Abumi Zaku. That Zaku still had the use of his arms after Sasuke had burned them badly was somewhat surprising, but ultimately it didn't matter. Shino was very clever, and used his Kikaichu effectively. Before the Otonin even knew it, Shino's bugs had entered the air tubes in his hands that he used his sound techniques with. The Aburame heir had tried to warn him not to continue, but like all arrogant fools, he didn't listen to reason. In return, he blew his own arms to bloody pieces. The second match had Sai up against a Kiri Kunoichi named Kasumi, which was a little ironic. The fight was actually interesting, for the first 10 seconds. Kasumi was sufficient in water techniques, and blew through Sai's ink creations with ease. After he got some water on him, he forfeited, stating that he couldn't compete with someone like her. It was such a load of crap. Sai was easily Chunin level already, and he could have at the very least fought her off much longer. Naruto knew why he forfeited. It was another order from Danzo. He didn't know what was going on, but Danzo was just letting Orochimaru do as he pleased, and the blonde wasn't very pleased with that fact. Will Akimichi Choji and King Yuta Dosa please enter the arena? Hate called out the next two names on the screen. Asuma sighed and looked at his student. He was about to bribe him into fighting with barbecue as a reward, but instead held his tongue when he saw the determination in Choji's eyes. He didn't want to fight, but he knew that it was important to show the strength of not only Konoha, but the Akimichi clan as well. He had took Naruto's words to heart, and now worked hard to be a worthy friend to the bringer of hope. He wasn't all that much stronger than he was a couple of weeks ago, but he was at least willing to go out there and fight, no matter what the odds. When the young Akimichi glanced at Naruto, the blonde had nothing but a content smile on his face. He nodded to his gentle friend. A true Akimichi warrior, he whispered. Choji was able to read lips, something he was very proud of, so he caught Naruto's words. He jumped from the balcony he was standing on, ready to prove his strength. Why do I have to fight the fatty? Dosa groaned. He felt as though Choji was too weak to give him a good fight. His first mistake was calling the pleasantly plump boy fatty, because now he had a confident, angry Akimichi on his hands. When the fight started, Choji was eager to smash. Byuban Baika no Jutsu, partial multi-size technique, he called out, his right fist swelling. He took off at the Otonin with surprising speed for someone his size. Dosa was able to dodge the enlarged fist, the ground that it struck cracking a little under the pressure of Choji's strength. The Akimichi didn't let up though and dashed at him once again, intent on landing at least one blow. Instead of the giant fist hitting him like Dosa thought it would, Choji undid his transformation, his normal fist making contact with the man's bandaged jaw. Naruto smirked. He had reached his goal. Now, no matter the outcome, he had done his best, and that was enough. Dosa was sent skidding. When he stopped, he rubbed his jaw. The kid was a lot better than he thought he'd be. Alright, Choji. Dosa used his name, a sign of respect. You're not as useless as I claimed you'd be. For that I apologize. He dragged his sleeve up, revealing his melody arm. So I'm going to go all out too. Choji smirked. Sounds good. It was time to use his favorite jutsu. Nikuden Sasha, human bullet tank. He called out, his body changing into a giant, spinning ball-like bullet. He charged at his opponent, ready to slam his entire body into him. When he made it to the Otonin, however, he was met by his melody arm. Kayamaizen, resonating echo drill. Dosa shouted, having to put his all into this blast. His porous metal gauntlet used his chakra to use sound waves as a weapon, which was incredibly draining. He had to use almost all of his chakra to stop the Akimichi's blitz. He didn't know why, but the kid didn't stop until he absolutely had to. These were the people Orochimaru-sama wanted to take on. He was beginning to understand Uchiha Sasuke's logic. They really didn't have to prove themselves. They were so strong, in more ways than one. The bullet finally stopped to reveal an unconscious Choji. Dosa's eyes widened. Even with blood leaking from his ears, he had a smile on his face. "Winner, Kinyuta Dosu," Hate announced. Naruto smirked. Of course he could hear him. As Choji was rotating, trying to push past Dosu, he knew he would lose this battle. "Can you hear me, Naruto-san?" His ears began to bleed, but he kept pushing. "Thank you. I know what it means to be a shinobi now." As the medic nin rushed Choji away, Naruto decided to speak his mind. "Kinyuta Dosu!" he shouted, getting the Otonin's attention. "You just witnessed the will of fire." He smiled. "Don't ever forget it." Dosu was silent for a moment before he sighed. "You know what? I won't." He smirked. He was a strong opponent. A true shinobi. Naruto nodded his thanks for the kind words said about the gentle Cho. Choji finally had his wings. It was only a matter of time before he spread them. Now, Naruto was fairly close with Kiba, but he had to admit, the guy was a little too cocky for his own good. That's why when he started talking down on his opponent, a boy from Kiri named Osamu, Naruto couldn't do anything but shake his head in exasperation. Even Enko sighed in pity for that mud boy. Osamu looked very calm, and his eyes were very analytical. He looked at the Inuzuka with his defeat in mind. He reminded the blonde of a lesser Shikamaru. Lesser in the fact that Shikamaru had a tactical mind that even trumped his own. Kiba had gone straight for the win using his family's techniques. The Gutsuga, Fang passing Fang, he and Akamaru used had only looked very promising. In reality, he hadn't even used the technique. Osamu would become a very powerful genjutsu user one day. The fight ended without even a single blow. The next fight was almost as fast. Hyuga Niji was to fight a boy named Kahako. Now, Hinata was able to end her match against Kankuro in a matter of seconds with a single blow. That meant that the multitude of Jukin, gentle fist blasts her cousin quickly delivered to the Kiri shinobi were devastating. Niji moved with such grace, such fluidity that he looked like he was dancing rather than using the most deadly taijutsu style ever created. He was truly a genius, the likes of which the Hyuga haven't seen in years. It was like his clan's techniques just clicked with him. It was almost as tragic as it was poetic that he was born as a branch member. Niji was the victor, and no one was surprised. He was considered the strongest genin in the Chunin exams, right up there with Uchiha Sasuke and Gaara. Watching Niji reminded him of his promise to Uma. He would definitely fix the Hyuga. He would rid Konoha of all cages, and let the little birds fly free. This was the fight Naruto really wanted to see. He already knew how Sasuke's match would end. He had made the Uchiha High Chunin level. There was no way he would have lost. But this was probably going to be the most interesting fight they would have in these preliminaries. Rock Lee stood with Haruki, a blonde Kirinin. Haruki was huge, like he was from Kumo. He even had the dark skin to go with it. Naruto could feel his affinity. One guess. One or both of his parents had to be from Kumogakure for sure. That didn't matter though, because he was a shinobi for Kirigakure, and if his demeanor was anything to go by, he was a taijutsu expert, just like Lee. Oh yeah, this was going to be a most interesting match. As soon as Hate started the fight, Haruki surprised everyone with his speed. The guy was fast, but he had nothing on Konoha's beautiful green wild beast. Lee met the man's charge, a smile on his face. This was a most youthful match. "Konoha Reppu, Tree Leaf Gale," he called out. The taijutsu maneuver was very low in rank, but when used by someone like Mato Gai and Rock Lee, it became a very useful tool. His leg went out to sweep the large shinobi, but was met with nothing but air when said shinobi leapt into the air. Lee looked up to see the dark-skinned man about to slam a fist into him. Lee was able to roll to the left, narrowly dodging the obviously powerful swing. Getting back to their feet, the two taijutsu enthusiasts looked at each other. That's when the hulking blonde smiled. Boar, ram, snake, horse, dragon. Haruki slammed his hands onto the ground, lightning rushing from his palms. Raiten, Jibashi, lightning release, electromagnetic murder. The lightning rushed at Lee from the floor, tearing the ground apart as it went. To dodge the technique, Lee had to jump, resting on the giant ram hand seal statue. Lee! Mato Guy shouted, getting into his nice guy pose. Take off your weights. He gave his mini a thumb up and a giant smile. Really, Guy-sensei? Lee asked in a surprised tone. Hi! Guy shouted grandiosely. Show them the white-hot flames of your youth. Guy thought he was being very cool like his hip rival Kakashi, but the pose, coupled with his usual attire, he was very uncool. In the eyes of Rock Lee, however, he was the coolest man alive. I won't let you down, sensei, he shouted, sitting down to take his weights off. Everyone watching was a little confused. Does he think taking off a couple of weights will help him defeat Haruki? Kasumi asked no one in particular in a sarcastic voice. He's one of Kiri's strongest genin. There's no way this weirdo will even land a punch on him. Naruto smiled. Haruki did look rather strong, but they knew nothing about Lee. This youth he and his sensei spoke of wasn't as figurative as everyone thought. It was their way of expressing their dedication and will of fire. And for Rock Lee, he had both in bulk. Lee let loose his ankle weights, and the smirks on everyone's faces dropped just as fast as the very, very heavy training tools. The weights shook the arena when they met the floor, two large craters being formed. Haruki's eyes widened. What the hell was this kid? Lee smirked as he entered his Goken, strong fist stance. And with speeds no genin should possess, Lee vanished. The genin couldn't even see him, and Sasuke had to use his Sharingan to even keep up. Naruto smiled. Here we go, he whispered. Before Haruki could even react, Lee appeared right in front of him, delivering a powerful fist to his gut, and then vanishing again. This happened a few times more before the large genin chuckled. Is that all you've got? And just like Lee, Haruki vanished. How someone that big could move that fast was beyond Lee, but it didn't matter in the end. A few minutes of high-speed taijutsu later, both genin stopped. So you noticed it then? Haruki suddenly said. Lee narrowed his eyes. You can interpret my moves. How? Haruki smiled. Mato Guy is a very famous shinobi, and his personal creation, the Goken, strong fist, has been seen by many. My sensei developed a counter for you sensei's style. You're using an outdated form. Dissing his sensei was probably not the smartest thing to do. Lee! Naruto shouted. He didn't want the boy to show off all of his tricks yet. These were just the preliminaries after all. I give you permission to use it. Lee knew exactly what he was talking about. But it's not mine to use, Lee shouted back in a surprisingly serious voice. Why do you think I let you see it? He looked to Guy. I keep my promises, Lee. Lee looked to his sensei as well, confused at what was going on. Nevertheless, the smile on his face was one he rarely had. He didn't think he'd ever get to use this. It was going to be so youthful. Guy was just as confused. What had the bringer of hope taught his student? Rock Lee was no Sannin, that was obvious. But with the use of his sensei's teachings, he could use the Kamikaze creation. Kaimon Kai Gate of Opening. The first of the Hashimen had been opened. It wasn't enough. Kumon Kai Gate of Healing. Once again, another of his body's limiters opened, increasing his speed and strength. This was just enough for him to use it. You taught him how to open the Hashimen? Kakashi asked in surprise. How many gates can he open? Guy didn't even reply, too engrossed in his student. What was he going to do? What had Naruto taught him? He did remember the boy's promise, though. As long as take breath in this world, your students will be safe, this I promise you. I will protect them with my life, like I will protect you, because no matter what else happens, I love my village and her people. Niji smiled. He had already seen this before. He was truly grateful to have a rival such as Lee. It was time for these people to see another kind of genius. It was time for Rock Lee to show the world what hard work could accomplish. Lee entered a stance no one but Kakashi had ever seen before. His eye widened and he lifted his forehead protector, focusing his Sharingan on the impossible. Both his hands were posed in a regular enough boxing style, and his knees were bent. He was bending backward a little, and his right leg was in front of the left. It was a perfect stance. How in the hell did he learn this? This should have been impossible for anyone but Naruto. He doubted Guy could have learned it. He looked towards Naruto. "You didn't!" he shouted incredulously. Guy snapped out of his intense focus when he heard Kakashi's shocked voice. When his eyes met the blonde, all he saw was a monstrous smile. That's when Lee began. Kaminoikari, God's wrath. It was but a whisper, but Hiruzen heard it all the same. "You didn't really teach him this, did you?" Naruto just smiled. He was excited to see if he could actually pull this off without natural energy. "I will always help the angels of heaven." The green-clad genin took off, the ground smashing with the force of his speed. When he reappeared, he sent a sickening kick to the side of Haruki's head. As the huge genin was sent in the direction of the arena wall, Lee disappeared once more. He suddenly appeared in front of the Kirinin, sending an elbow to his gut. When the elbow stopped him, a barrage of fists was sent to his ribs. His hands were so fast that many couldn't even keep up with it. He then sent a furious backhand to his face, sending him flying again. Lee rushed after him, this time from above. Before he could crash into the wall, Lee was already spinning down. When his legs smashed into the bulky shinobi's back, it was over. Naruto had developed his own taijutsu maneuver to combat people like Mado Guy. It was on the level of the Omote Range, Front Lotus, just minus the negative drawbacks to the user's body. And of course, it was much more devastating when the blonde used it, since instead of using his bare fists, he used natural energy. But the fact that he was able to pull it off was incredible. It took such speed, such flexibility that someone as big as Kakashi or Mado Guy wouldn't be able to use it. It was created for the small to conquer the large. He was very adept at the style, and Naruto might teach him the actual last blow. The kick was the finishing touch that Naruto showed him, but when Naruto used it, a blow to the heart finished the maneuver, killing the target. Naruto always made sure to kill when he was supposed to kill. You never wound something you can't kill. It usually comes back to bite you in the ass. "Winner Rock Lee," Hate announced. "Isn't that a little advanced for someone like Lee-kun?" Hiruzen asked. Naruto chuckled. "That's not even his greatest technique, Gigi." "Oh? And what is?" "That genin knows the Ura range, Reverse Lotus." Hiruzen didn't show it, but he was shocked. The Ura range, Reverse Lotus, was only something a handful of shinobi ever born could use. It was the pinnacle of regular taijutsu techniques. The only thing more powerful could only be done by Mado Guy. That's when a smile found its way on the Hokage's aged face. "The great tree is still strong." Naruto smiled. "As it always will be." The last match was a Kiri Kunoichi named Yoko and the Konoha shinobi Tsurugi Misumi. The male genin used a very rare method called Nan no Kaizo, soft physique modification. It allowed him to dislocate his joints and control his softened body with his chakra. He immediately tried to suffocate the smaller-than-average girl, but he soon learned that size meant nothing in the shinobi world. Yoko had surprised even Naruto when she used Yoton. Looking at the little girl, she did remind him of Mei a little. She had the same hair color, but it wasn't as long as the Mizuki's. Her skin was a little darker as well. By the time Misumi felt heat, he was already being burned by the lava seeping from the Kunoichi's mouth. The match ended quickly, and Yoko was the winner. She was small, but Naruto could tell that she was skilled, incredibly so. God, she looked so much like Mei. With that match finished, the preliminaries were over. The Hokage and his shadow stood in front of the 12 prevailing genin. These 12 were made up from 4 different villages, the majority of them being from Konoha. The preliminaries had played out exactly like Hiruzen thought they would. Naruto was a natural-born leader. If he died this second, his shadow would be able to lead the village no problem. Leading a genin or chunin team would have been easy for him to figure out. That wasn't the reason he had assigned Naruto to the Jonin sensei. The first reason was to get him closer to Uchiha Sasuke. That, of course, worked out perfectly. Anything Naruto wanted to do, he did it. The second reason was to enhance the might of Heaven's new generation. The genin of the village were strong in their own rights, but Hiruzen knew that 2 weeks with the Kamikage and his genin would benefit from it. That was the true reason behind Naruto's assignment, to ensure the future of Konohagakure no Sato. As he looked on at the 6 genin from Konoha that made it, he knew his shadow had accomplished his task. Even the ones who didn't make it past the preliminaries had bettered themselves. Akimichi Choji had been a worry for not only the Hokage, but the boy's father as well. He was far too gentle, and neither of them thought he would make it very far in the shinobi world. Seeing him fight today totally changed the Hokage's opinion of the boy. Naruto was able to see the important things within people's hearts, and then he could inspire them to bring it out. There was a fire in Choji's eyes now that Hiruzen had thought impossible for him to attain. Then there was young Haruno Sakura. The pink-haired girl had entered the arena looking like a true kunoichi. Her gentle look and somewhat aggressive personality reminded him of his student, Tsunade. She may have lost her fight, but she no longer looked like the little girl from the academy. She was more confident, and Hiruzen knew she was determined to improve herself. She could very well become a powerful kunoichi if she kept that dedicated mindset. Hiruzen decided it was time to begin. The 12 of you have proven that you are ready to advance to the next rank. He paused, trying to etch the faces of the young shinobi before him. They would soon grow old, and some of them, and then eventually all of them, would die. You are now one step closer to that rank. Stage 3 will be the last of the exams, and whether you advance in your shinobi career will be up to your performances and respective leaders. He turned to Hate, the proctor of the 3rd exam. Hate nodded and coughed before he started. The 3rd stage will be similar to this one. Anko held a bag out. You will draw a number, and that will be your opponent. Anko went down the line of genin, each pulling out a piece of paper with a number on it. The 3rd stage will be held within 1 month from now. In this time we suggest you train and prepare to fight the opponent that fate has decided for you. He looked at Naruto, letting the blonde say his words. Get as powerful as you possibly can. His eyes met Gaara's blue-green ones. You have to if you want to attain your goals. Anko had finally finished, and the genin now had their numbers. 1s, Naresh Shikamaru Temari. 2s, Hyuga Hinata Kasumi. 3s, Uchiha Sasuke Gaara. 4s, Hyuga Neji Rock Lee. 5s, Aburame Shino Osamu. 6s, Kinyuta Dosu Yoko. You know who you'll be facing. Now go and prepare. The Hokage finished. Naruto signaled for Sasuke to wait, while the rest of the shinobi filed out of the room. Anko, Naruto started. I need to do something. It won't take long, so is it alright if we spend some time together afterwards? Anko nodded. Sure thing. I'll be home, so just drop by whenever. Naruto smiled. Sounds like a date. Anko whistled. You're gutsy, soldier boy. It was a little embarrassing to admit it, but this was the first time anyone had ever asked to go on a date with her. She never had an actual relationship with the other people she had slept with. You should know better, Snake Lady. Jiraiya is my godfather. You can't be related to him, blood or otherwise, and not be gutsy. He replied cheekily. It was the truth, though. Jiraiya had a knack for rubbing off on people, and it was hard not to gain the man's brave sense of self. Anko just shook her head with a smirk. She couldn't think of anything to argue about that statement. When she left, Naruto and Sasuke were the only 2 left in the arena. The Uzumaki became very serious as he spoke his next words. I think it's about time we speak to Sai. His expression darkened. And I have the perfect idea to get our point across. Sasuke didn't know what his Shursho had in mind, but he could tell it was going to be fun. Danzo was standing before one of his teams. They had just gotten back from a mission, and were reporting their success. They were in the underground root base, a secure base at that. That's when the voice he was afraid of hearing down here spoke out. My eyes are your eyes. The voice came from somewhere above, and to the right of him. My arms are your arms. This time, the same voice was somewhere below and to his left. His root agents stood, unsheathing their blades. My soul is your soul. Once again, the same voice was in a different position. I am your sword, your shield. I am your shadow, your silent warrior. I am your solution. Suddenly, the person the voice belonged to was right in front of the root operatives and their leader. I am ANBU. He had an angry look on his face as he looked over the root agents. True ANBU. The root agents made to move against the intruder, but were stopped by Danzo. Don't. You stand no chance against him. He sighed. What do I owe this unexpected visit to, Naruto-san? That's when Uchiha Sasuke's sunshine body flickered, next to the blonde. Sasuke-kun? I see, so you're under Naruto-san's tutelage now? Drop the polite act, Danzo. He looked the root agents over. You know, I used to respect you somewhat. His eyes met Danzo's only visible one. You used to be a warrior, a protector from the shadows. He narrowed his eyes. The moment you took what doesn't belong to you was the moment you became the enemy. He looked at Danzo's bandage-covered arm. I'm here for 2 reasons. He began. The first reason is to retrieve something that belongs to my shadow. Danzo's eyes flickered to Sasuke. You will have her eyes ready for me by the time we leave. Danzo just stayed silent. It was never healthy to poke the already pissed-off dragon. And the second thing, he looked at the shadows of the room to his right. Your operative needs to stick to the status quo. If I ever see him abandon his team again, I will kill him. Do you understand me, Danzo? Danzo didn't say anything, or even nod his head, but Naruto was able to feel his answer. Good. An operative with a plain white mask appeared next to Danzo. Naruto knew this man to be the second in command of Root Yuki. He had a cylindrical jar that was full of liquid. Within that liquid, a pair of eyes floated. Sasuke looked at the eyes with confusion. Who did they belong to? Why did Naruto say they were his? Is there anything else I can do for you, Naruto? The blonde smirked. Danzo was pissed. He had to stand here and take orders from a 12-year-old in front of his men. It was humiliating. After Naruto took the jar, he and Sasuke began to walk away. Oh, you know what? There was one other thing. Naruto vanished. When he reappeared, his kunai was embedded in Yuki's throat. Whatever your involvement is with Orochimaru, it ends now. He ripped his blade from the root agent's throat. This is your one and only warning. Do not push me, Danzo. He was now ready to leave the dark, dingy base of the Foundation. As they made their way out, Sasuke finally decided to ask the question on his mind. Whose eyes are these? He really wanted to know. He felt like he knew who they belonged to for some reason. They belonged to a victim of Danzo's. Naruto stopped, looking Sasuke in the eye. They are your mother's. Sasuke froze. Why did that bastard have my mother's eyes? Sasuke snarled. He'd never been so angry before. He took what did not belong to him, Sasuke. And for his trespasses against your family, he will lose his life. Naruto explained calmly. But when? He shouted. Why not now? You could end him easily right this instant. He deserves to die. Sasuke was on the verge of tears. He had no right to touch his mother. Calm yourself, Sasuke, the blonde said softly. You need to be in control of yourself at all times. I'm going to give you power that could seriously injure or kill innocents if you lose control. You can't lose your calm so easily anymore, you can't afford it. Sasuke took in a deep breath. He was still angry, but he knew Naruto was right. He wanted to control his power, not have his power control him. You are right, I could kill him. He looked around him, all of them. But what would that accomplish? No. He will not die just by my hand. You have been hurt the most by him. He smirked. The last thing he will see is your blazing Sharingan. The Uzumaki started walking again. We do things right, and our way, or we don't do them at all. Sasuke was still for a moment before he let out a deep breath and smirked. That did sound very appealing. He walked behind his Shursho, his mind completely calm and collected. He was a monster now. He needed to act like one. Why did you need Kasan's eyes? Sasuke asked when they made it out of the underground compound. You'll need these eyes, Sasuke. They'll save you from the darkness, he answered. Sasuke looked at him confusingly. What darkness? He asked. Naruto smirked. Have you read the scrolls in the Naka shrine? Sasuke's eyes widened. How did you know about them? He thought no one but the Uchiha knew that they existed. And then there was the fact that no one but the Uchiha could read them. Itachi was like a brother to me, Sasuke. He was also my Kohai, which was a little awkward since he was older than me. He smiled at the memories of Karasa calling him senpai just to embarrass him. There were no secrets between us. When he developed the Mangekyo Sharingan, he told me what he read from the scrolls. Mangekyo, that's the ultimate form of the Sharingan. Sasuke shivered. He showed them to me that night. Naruto gave a sad look. Yeah. He sighed. Well, I'm planning on helping you unlock them as well. Sasuke's eyes widened. The drawback to the Mangekyo is that the wielder starts to lose their eyesight until they completely go blind. He shook his head. Itachi's already lost so much of his sight. He held up the jar. These eyes will be yours when you unlock them. And as for Itachi, he smirked. Let's just say I know Danzo's little secret. Sasuke was taking a moment to let the information digest. What's that mean? He finally asked. Naruto clenched his fist. Danzo has the other half of Itachi's replacement. And before I let you rip that bastard's soul out of his body, I'm going to save our brother. Sasuke smiled. Can't wait. Naruto returned the smile. Agreed. Naruto and Sasuke went their separate ways after leaving the root base. Sasuke decided to go home and get a good night's sleep, knowing Naruto was going to work him into the ground the entire month. Naruto decided to pick up Anko, so that's why he was standing at the door to hers and Kurenai's apartment. When he knocked, it only took a few seconds for it to open. Naruto-san? Kurenai said when she opened the door. Hello, Kurenai-san. Is Anko here? He asked. Kurenai nodded. Yes. Hold on a moment, I'll go get her. Naruto nodded and suppressed the smile that wanted to creep onto his face. Kurenai was shocked that Anko had become so close to the blonde, and she was a little worried. If Yugao knew they were spending so much time together, she wouldn't be very happy. A few moments later, Anko came to the door. You ready? Naruto asked. Anko nodded with a smirk. Sure am. Now woo me, soldier boy. Naruto returned the smirk. She just challenged him. Just remember you asked for it, snake lady. He grabbed Anko by the side and vanished from the doorstep. Kurenai sighed. She really hoped Yugao wouldn't be upset with her for allowing Anko to take her Otuto's innocence. After spending the day wooing Anko, which involved eating dango on top of the Hokage monument and drinking ridiculously expensive sake straight from the bottle, the two decided to walk through the tea avenue. They had spent most of their time just laughing about anything and everything. They spoke a little of their pasts, but quickly decided against it since most of Naruto's past is classified and he already knew everything about her. That's when the kissing started. Naruto decided that he very much liked kissing Anko since she liked it when he was a little grabby. After what seemed like hours, they decided to take the walk they were currently on. The smells of the tea avenue still reminded Naruto of peace, and walking it with someone you loved made it all the better. They didn't really talk while they walked. They just enjoyed the other's presence. This was definitely one of the Uzumaki's favorite days of all time now. Nothing could ruin it. Oh, how wrong he was. He felt one of the genin from Kiri approaching them. It was the small Yotan using girl. He didn't know what she would want with them. When she landed in front of them, Naruto smiled at the girl. Hello, Yoko-san. Is there something you need? Anko raised an eyebrow. What was the little genin doing interrupting her date? Your presence is requested outside the village. My sensei told me to give this to you, Yoko said, handing the blonde a folded piece of paper. When Naruto took it into his hands, his eyes widened and his heart stopped. I'm ready then. Naruto started walking towards the gate. Let's go now. Yoko nodded and began to follow. Before he got any further, he turned to Anko. Aren't you coming? Did the snake user really think he would just bail on her like that? My sensei said for you to come alone. The Kyrijin spoke up. Naruto turned to the auburn-haired girl. I was on a date, Yoko. I'm not just going to leave her behind. Either she comes or I don't. And we both know your sensei would be very unpleased if you upset the shinobi responsible for freeing your country. Yoko clicked her tongue in annoyance before she relented. Alright, she can come. Just hurry. Naruto turned to Anko and gestured for her to follow. When she began to follow, the three of them took to the roofs. What was that piece of paper? Anko asked. She didn't know why, but she could definitely tell that it surprised him greatly when he saw it. Naruto didn't reply for a few seconds. It's the letter I wrote May before I left Mizu. Anko suddenly felt very nervous. If it's here, that means she is too. He took in a deep breath. You said you wanted to speak with her. I don't know if she even still has feelings for me. She could just be here to let me know she's moved on. But if she's here to tell me she still cares for me, I don't want to hide you from her. You both deserve to hear what I have to say, and then we can go from there. Wherever there is. Anko just stayed silent. She was a lot more nervous than she thought she'd be. The Mizukage was a very beautiful, very powerful woman. Anko knew she was good-looking, but anyone would be a little intimidated by someone like Terumi Mei. Her date with Naruto confirmed everything she already knew about her feelings for the blonde. She was now more than ever willing to fight for him. She didn't want to lose him. She didn't want to lose this feeling. He was her knight in shining armor, and she would do anything to keep him. It didn't take long before they were outside the village gates, making their way to some random location. This far from the village, and Naruto couldn't feel what was happening within her. A few minutes later, and they were at their destination. That's when he saw her. She looked just as beautiful as the day he met her. Her beautiful auburn hair was longer than he remembered. Her skin was just as creamy as it was before. The blue top that hung from her shoulders accentuated her bust and curves. It was dark out, but she shined like an angel. When she turned, he felt the same feeling in his stomach when Anko looked at him. He swallowed hard. Having his voice shake would have been humiliating. They stood there while she walked across the small clearing they were in. The grass was long, and the trees surrounded the edges. The sky was cluttered with stars and the moon was full. When she felt them enter the clearing, her stomach had a funny feeling. When she turned, he was there, the same yet so different. He was much taller now. He'd be taller than her soon. His hair was longer as well, if only slightly. His adorable whisker marks hadn't faded. Good. She loved those. His eyes were just as blue as she remembered. His skin was a little darker, and his clothing was completely different. Gone was his ANBU attire, and in its place was a true Jonin uniform. His face still held the strong but young look. Even through all of the cloths she could tell that his muscle definition had increased as well. The last time she had met him he had made her feel like she was next to a fire. He always felt warm and bright. But now, 4 years later, it was like she was next to the sun. He was so bright, so warm, and was overwhelming. She decided to ignore the woman next to him and approach her warrior angel. She smiled at him when she was in front of him. Naruto-kun, she greeted. Naruto swallowed again for good measure. Mei-chan, what are you doing in Hai no Kuni so early? He wasn't complaining, just a little confused. I didn't feel like waiting another month to see you. She raised an eyebrow. But if I'm bothering you, I could always leave and come back when the finals begin. Naruto shook his head. No! He almost shouted. You don't have to leave. I just wasn't expecting you to get here so early. And I didn't know if you'd even want to see me. Mei laughed. It was a beautiful thing, her laugh. You know, I actually tried to get over you. She sighed. Unfortunately, you're very hard to forget about. She laughed again. I read your letter every day, you know. She looked at Anko for a second. Did you forget about me? She asked softly. It was now or never. She deserved to know. Mei, he started. I've thought about you every day since the first day I met you. A piece of me never left Mizu, never left you. Anko knew it was too much to hope that he didn't feel how hurt she was right now. I spent every day thinking that you would forget about me. That you'd find someone else, someone older, and move on. He shook his head. You're my princess, May, even now. But there's something you need to know. May gulped, her stomach now in knots. He took in a deep breath. Terumi, May, this is Mitarashi Anko. Neither woman said a word. I fell in love with her, May. May froze, and it felt like her heart did as well. Anko was more nervous than ever. She was wrong, this was a bad idea. I didn't mean for it to happen. The blonde was cut off by the Mizukage. I thought you were different, she whispered. Naruto felt her anger, her betrayal. But you're not. Yes, he was. You're just like the rest. She didn't even want to look at him. Did you ever really love me, asshole? God, she felt like an idiot. Why did she ever fall for a child? Naruto had felt her mind, and it hurt him more than any wound he had ever suffered. Did he ever really love you? Anko shouted, not only surprising Naruto and May, but herself as well. Are you stupid? The woman really pissed the snake user off. I am the Mizukage, Mitarashi. You will not speak to me like. May was cut short by Anko's snort. Please, Terumi, I don't care if you're the fire daimyo. You're still stupid. May narrowed her eyes. You know how much Naruto struggles because of us? If she was smart, she'd just let the Mizukage think whatever she wanted and have Naruto all to herself, but something was not letting her close her mouth. If you're thinking he's been sleeping around with me or anyone else, you're sadly mistaken. He loved you and only you until he met me, and even I haven't been with him. And you want to know why that is? She was really pissed off. She had seen Naruto's expression after she last spoke. Someone like him didn't deserve to look so broken. It's because of you. The two of you weren't even together, and he didn't know if you even had feelings for him anymore, but he felt that if he slept with me he'd be betraying you. Why was she defending his love for another woman? He told me that whenever he thinks about you, he hates himself because he feels like he's betraying me, and he hates himself for thinking about me because he feels like he's betraying you. Anko. Naruto tried to stop the woman. Even saying these words stung her heart. The Jonin ignored him, continuing her rant. I can't be with the only person I've ever loved like this because of you. Why are you defending him? May cried out. Don't you feel like I do? Of course I do. When he told me about you, it broke my heart. But I was at least willing to speak to you for his sake. You think that I like this any more than you? But for the person I love, I'd do anything. She closed her eyes, trying to hold back the tears trying to escape. He set me free from a curse everyone said I'd be stuck with my entire life. I know about him freeing your country. She opened her eyes, looking at Naruto. He's amazing. He helps people and never asks for anything in return. May remembered that he asked for nothing but a healthy alliance between their nations for freeing Mizu. He doesn't have a family. He never has. He deserves better than even me and you, but if he's satisfied with me, then I'm going to try my best to make him happy. May was breathing hard, her anger replaced with confusion and indecisiveness. So what do you suppose we do? Do you really expect me to share him? That's absurd. Anko sighed. I have no idea. She narrowed her eyes. But we owe it to him to listen to what he thinks. That's the least we can do for the person who changed our lives so much. May calmed her breathing. She had overreacted. She was still upset, but this woman had a point. She shouldn't have blown up like she did. Anko was right, they weren't together. He hadn't really betrayed her, and he still cared for her enough not to sleep with anyone, even with another woman he apparently loved. She looked at Naruto, her eyes telling him that she was ready to at least listen. Naruto steeled his emotions. You both know of the ability I possess to read emotions. He took in a deep breath. It may sound lame of me to say this, but I truly love you both equally. He felt both Anko and May's doubt. So instead of explaining it to you, I'll just show you. He walked over to Anko, taking her hand into his. May narrowed her eyes at them touching. He then walked them over to May, holding his hand out for her to take. She just looked at the outstretched limb for a moment before she took it into her hand as well. I've never tried an open link between 3 people before, so this'll be new for me too. Enko and May saw his eyes turn gold before his entire sockets shined with a majestic light. It didn't take long for it to happen to them as well. Their world went white. They were crying. It hurt so badly. Their neck burned, and their heart ached. Their eyes were puffy from how much they cried. They hadn't eaten anything in days. They were too depressed to eat. He had abandoned them. He was their world. They would have done anything for him. How could he do this to them? Was it their fault? They had to hide it from them. The people would kill them if they knew their secret. They couldn't help it though, they were born this way. Why did everyone hate people like them? They didn't hurt people. They weren't bad. They were just different. Kasen told them to be proud of their bloodline. What did they ever do to be feared? They could feel the fear and hate everyone felt towards them. They were all alone, always. They were never scared, but sometimes they were lonely. They understood why everyone hated them. But still, it hurt. Why were they so different from everyone else? Why could they feel everything? That was the worst part, understanding why they were hated. This was a nightmare. How could they wake up? Things were getting a little better. They no longer cried themselves to sleep. They no longer felt betrayed. Now they felt pissed. They were never going to let someone hurt them like that again. They were going to kill him. They needed to get stronger. They were no longer afraid. They didn't care what people thought about them. They would fight back. They heard about a resistance. That's where they belong. This was their home too. They would no longer cower in the face of the ignorant. They needed to get stronger. They were finally awake. The nightmare had stopped for a short time. They had done something terrible to a terrible person. They finally had a way to do what they wanted. They were already strong, and they'd only get stronger. They needed to feel awake again. He had freed them. They thought they'd be forever trapped, but he freed them. He just walked into their life and fixed it. He had heard their heart. He was their knight in shining armor. They didn't ever want to have this feeling again, but they did. They loved him. They were just curious at first. They didn't think it would turn out like this. He had set their people free. He had asked for nothing in return. Whenever he smiled, they felt warm, safe. He was the most amazing person they had ever met. He was their warrior angel. They loved him. They dreamt about both of them every night. When they dreamt about the first, they dreamt about her beautiful, long auburn hair that brought out her beautiful green eyes and cute smile. When they dreamt about the second, they dreamt about large, brown, playful, somewhat mischievous eyes and her thousand-wet smile. They were always on their mind. They hated themselves for loving them both. They wished for nothing but to have them both, but they knew that was very unlikely. Why did they love both of them? The gold shine faded from their eyes. Naruto was a little tired, but he'd be fine in a few minutes. He was able to catch both Mei and Anko before they fell. That was a lot harder than he thought it'd be. It completely exhausted the girls. They couldn't stay conscious after that overload of information. When he synced with Anko, he only had the link open one way. He received information only, Anko received nothing. This time, however, he completely opened the link. Anko, Mei, and Naruto now knew everything about each other. Naruto made sure not to look into the top secret information he and Mei knew. But everything else, their childhoods, their entire lives, it all was shared. Yoko and her sensei, another woman with auburn hair, approached him. "She's fine," he stated, feeling their worry for their leader. "She's just exhausted." He allowed the older woman to take Mei into her arms. Before they could leave, Naruto stopped them. "Wait." He held out the letter he had written Mei. "Can you make sure she gets this when she wakes?" Yoko nodded and took the letter. "Thanks." When the Kirinin took off, Naruto decided it was late, and that Anko needed to get home. With one final look at the moon, his sunshine body flickered out of the clearing, intent on dropping Anko off and heading home. He really needed his Nei-chan. She was always there to talk to him and help him with whatever he needed. He had slipped in the window of Anko's room, making sure he was unheard. He knew Kurenai was asleep in the next room, and that she wasn't alone. He didn't want to wake two sleeping Jonin because he couldn't be silent. It would have been embarrassing. He laid Anko in her bed, pulling the covers over her. He took her sandals and trench coat off, trying to make her as comfortable as he could. He just stared at her sleeping face for a moment. He was able to feel her soul a second time, and it was just as beautiful as the first. He was about to kiss her forehead when he felt the extreme feelings of sadness and desperation form Yugao. His heart stopped when he couldn't feel hate. What in Kami's name happened? He vanished, trying to get to his sister as fast as he could. Yugao could do nothing but stand and stare at the body of her dead fiancé. She had her ANBU mask on, and Shinobi, never mind ANBU, never cried. Her team was silent, as was the other ANBU cell that arrived before them. Standing here, atop Kikyo Castle, the cold wind hitting her already shivering body, all she could do was curse the full moon staring at her. She usually loved gazing at it, but right now, with hate gone, she didn't much care for the beauty of it anymore. She only had one question. Where was Naruto? Why hadn't he felt the battle and come to save her lover? That's what he did, wasn't it? Save people? So why didn't he save the person her heart belonged to? Naruto arrived just in time to feel her anger at him. Why? Nico? He stuttered. Why was she so mad at him? This is an ANBU matter. You don't belong here. Leave. The purple-haired Kunoichi droned in an emotionless voice. Naruto looked as if he'd been struck. Why he tried to speak, but the shock of her reaction to him wouldn't let the words come out. And then, the one emotion he never thought he'd feel from his sister, his best friend, hit him like a Bijudama, tailed beast bomb. Yugao hated him. She signed for the ANBU assembled to remove the boy from the crime scene, but no one, not even the other team, listened. Naruto lost all emotion in his eyes. He looked dead inside. I'm still the second in command, Nico. He turned to hate. Now let me do what I came here for. He paused. And I will no longer need to stay with you and hate. I'll be fine on my own. He would not cry. He had something impossible to do. Why he spoke like hate wasn't lying before them dead she didn't understand. It was time for him to give his new senjutsu technique a try. If the positive side of the metaphorical number line represented the yang half of his ability, then the negative half represented the yin half. And if the yang half, which represents the physical side of the ninja arts, allowed him to give natural energy form in the impure world, then that only meant. Naruto's gilded eyes closed, his left hand touching Hyde's head, his right touching his heart. He concentrated, trying to find what he was looking for. And then, he found it. Hate? Nothing responded for a few seconds until. And Naruto? The instant Naruto's eyes shot open, Hyde's did the same. The Tokubetsu Jonin sprang upright, taking in a deep breath. How? He whispered, feeling his body for the wounds that should still be there. He found nothing. Yugao just froze. What had just happened? She felt his dead body with her own hands. This was impossible, even for the Kamikage, right? His words found their way to the front of her confused mind. And I will no longer need to stay with you and hate. I'll be fine on my own. What had she done? Naruto cursed under his breath. He didn't know enough about the yin half of natural energy. He should have trained with it more before he used it. He was already so dizzy. Before he lost consciousness, he whispered the name of the only true friend he had left. Kurama. Naruto's pupils slit vertically. That's it for part 7. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.